Today we're going to talk about how to install the CB1 on the BigTreeTech Manta M4P version 2.1. Now keep in mind that this will also work on the Manta M8P, as its motherboard is exactly the same in the process. So there will be a different printer config file, but the process is the same. So to start with, I need to point out a couple of things. There are multiple types of actual computer modules that you can add. This is the CB1 as well as this. This is actually a newer version. I believe it's 2.1, but I might be incorrect. It will attach to these tiny ports right here. These are the actual Raspberry Pi versions. So this one is without eMMC, which is basically memory on board, and this one does have it. Now there are other variations of this where Wi-Fi is not included. That's why I'm showing only these two types in future tutorials. So to set this up, I need to point out a couple of things on the underside of this board. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to point out that there's a couple of things we have to keep in mind. This is actually where the MCU for the board will be loaded. So we're going to have to use one of these, being the regular SD card, and then the micro SD card will be used actually for the operating system of the CB1. So to start this process, what we need to do is, let me place this back down for a second. We need to first grab an SD card. This is the micro SD. It's actually 32 gigabytes. We're going to place it in our card reader, and then we're going to place this in the computer. So you just heard the beep that it's connected. So we're going to have to go over to the desktop now. So on the desktop, obviously there's a little bit of instruction that's required, but first I'm going to show you where the repositories are. This is on the GitHub page up here. So I'll leave a link in the description for this, but you'll type Manta, and this will bring you to the repository. Next, you'd click on code and then download zip. Now I've already done this, so I'm not going to show you the process, but I'll just click this anyways. But I'll show you the actual folder. Hopefully this will come right up. Let me just bring it over. So what we have here is the downloaded zip, and this is the one I just did. And then you need to right click and extract to get these files extracted. So inside here, there's actually going to be the information on the board, such as the manual right here, which I believe I still have open. So let me pull this up and see if I've got it. So they give a link to do the CB1 for releases. I've already gone to this. This is actually in the BigTreeTech M4P manual. And this is the actual page number being 22. So let's go back over to our browser. And as you can see in the browser, I actually have this up already. So here's the actual current build being 2.1.2. And they talk about what type of kernel, the changelog, and then of course, you know, there's other things that you can set over here, which currently I won't go into, but we'll look at that later. But down here, I'm actually using the image right here for Klipper. So this is the one for CB1, Debian 11, Bullseye, Klipper, and this is kernel 5.16. So if you go over to my actual folder for the downloads, you can see, let me bring it over here so you can see it better. So over in here, you can see that I already have this downloaded. You don't have to extract this. This will be taken care of inside Raspbian Imager. So to load that, I actually have it right here. Now I'm going to have to click yes, so you're not going to see this for a second. Then it will come up. So I'm going to enlarge this so you can see it better. Then I'm going to click on Choose OS, Use Custom. Then I'm going to select what's in our Downloads folder, click Open. Then I'm going to click the storage device, which is going to be the SD card or micro SD. And then I'm going to click Write and then Yes for Overwrite. Now this may take several minutes to actually load the actual image onto the drive. So essentially, I'm going to show you the Klipper website real quick, and if this doesn't finish before then, what we'll do is we'll actually pause the video and then I'll pick up from there. So if we go back over to the browser, you can see over here I have Klipper. It's klipper-3d.org. Now normally you're going to use this for reference, so one of the things you're going to need is to know how to install it. So let's see if we can find the install here. So installation. We're actually not going to do an actual build, hopefully. And when I say hopefully, if their Klipper image does work on BigTreeTech's website that we just downloaded, then we won't have to worry about this. But we will need to use one command here, and this is ls dev serial by -id in anything that appears. That means that there can be more than one thing. In this case, we're only working with one board, so we're going to expect to only see one thing. But that will give us a listing of devices similar to this for the pathing to that device that we can then use. The other thing I wanted to point out is over in here, this is actually downloaded, so let me close that real quick. So if you go over to Klipper firmware, this firmware right here can be used, at least in this configuration, the last time I tried it. But we may have to build this in the future for things like the CM4 for Raspberry Pi. Now here's the actual config file that we would actually use for the actual configuration. So this is already downloaded, but we'll take a quick look. Currently it's set for, here's your X stepper. If you were to in fact want to use a more complex stepper, you would scroll down here and they actually have part of it figured out for you already. So they have the run current and then they hopefully have the correct pinout. If the pinout is incorrect, this should be an end stop pin for, I believe, X, but we can verify that real quick by going back. So let me scroll up to where that is. So if we go over to the Manta and then we go to hardware, they actually have a pin out diagram. So if you click on this, you'll see the pins. So you can see like PD6, that's actually in the EXP set. So you have two ribbons of EXP1 and 2. And then of course you have other ones that are broken out for like the SD card where you see PA7. But what we're looking for is the end stop. So I'm not exactly sure on this board where they are, so I have to find them. It should be 3 pins. So as you can see right here, we have E0 underscore stop. So that's the extruder end stop. This may be used for other functionality or it may be used for something special in Klipper. But as you can see, the X end stop here is PC0. So if we were to go back and check this in the Manta folder, we go over to Klipper, and then we're going to go to not the Varan, but the regular one for a normal user. We can actually check. So right here, the end stop is PC0. So that should be the same down in here when you're using, I got this wrong, when you're using the actual end stop. So it's going to be your diag pin actually in this case. This is actually the address of the TX RX. So both TX and RX are happening on the exact same pin in this particular case. So that's actually PB12. So I was incorrect earlier when I said it was the end stop. But there's going to be additional sensor settings in here if you do sensorless homing, but I'll cover that in a future tutorial for the TMC2209 stepper. But you're going to have to copy this and place that up here just for easy reference. You can leave it down there, but it's easier just to copy and paste it up here so that you can see everything relating together, because you may need to do a virtual end stop with this particular thing, but I'll show that obviously in future tutorials. So let's check on the actual loading over here. It looks like it's about to verify. So let me give this a moment more over in here and point out a couple of other things that might be of interest. This is actually your bed size. So this would be for something like an Ender 3 where it's 235 millimeters and then it's 0 position. So this is the length of this axis. Then here we have microsteps of 16. That usually will be default unless you're using a TMC type stepper. And then there are other settings that are left out of here that will be covered inside of here. So if you were to look for stepper drivers or TMC steppers in this case, they might have down here, I don't want to scroll too fast, the actual breakout of these commands. It's actually up above someplace. So let's see if I can find it very quickly. So here we go, the reference. So they're going to talk about the actual configuration. For sensorless homing, it's going to use, I believe, diag 1, and then there's going to be a sensitivity setting here. But this is a large subject matter to cover during this, so I'm going to skip that. And we're going to go back over here, and we're actually going to see that it's almost complete. So what we're going to do in a moment is actually install this underneath on the board. But I also want to do the actual firmware as well. So I'm going to show you both processes at the same time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pop this out so you can actually see what I'm doing. So if I go back over to the desktop, I'm going to take the drive out. I'm going to pop out the actual SD card, and that will insert right down in here. So as you can see, the actual graphic or silk screening here kind of helps you line it up. So you can just slide it in like so. This one's going to obviously go right here, but we have to put the firmware on it. So we're going to take this, we're going to place it in here as well, and then we'll read this or fill this on the actual computer. So let me plug this in for a second. Let's go back over to the desktop. I'm going to go over to my downloads file or folder, excuse me, and I'm going to go to the MP4. Inside of here, I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to go to firmware, Klipper, and you can see that there's a firmware-usb.bin. So I'm going to send this to the drive, hopefully. And then I'm going to go over to the drive and I'm going to correct something here. So it has to be firmware.bin. So I'm going to right click, rename, and then I'm going to backspace until it's correctly named. If it loads correctly, it'll be renamed to firmware.cur with a different time. So let's go back over to the desktop, and I'm going to have to show you a couple more steps. So I'm going to pop this out. I'm going to place this in here. And initially I just want to load the firmware and then be done with it. So I have a jumper already on. So what I'm going to do, I'm using the jumper in this case just to show you how to use this, but normally you'll run without it. This provides USB support. So if I take this off, you'll see what I mean. If I plug this in, the board won't power. So if I take this off again and I place this jumper here on these two pins and plug it in, this firmware will then load. So you're not going to see very much occurring. Hopefully I'm gonna have to turn on the power for the board real quick. So it just flashed. So I'm going to disconnect this. I'm gonna pop this out, but I'm also going to add in the actual board. So as you can see, there's little connectors over here. What you need to do is actually line these up over the holes, and then you're gonna actually apply a little bit of pressure after you've lined the holes up to click it into place. So we already have the drive installed. We're gonna actually have to change something on this drive that I forgot to show you, and that's the actual configuration for your network. So I'm gonna pop this in, plug it into the computer, and show you this mod real quick. I will blur it out though, so you're not gonna see too much, but I'll show you the initial thing. So I'm gonna close this. I'm going to go over to my downloads folder. So I'm gonna bring this over for a second and click on the actual folder being the boot folder. Right click, and I'm gonna go to edit in NotePad. So this is gonna come up in a second, and as you can see, there is a Wi-Fi SSID. This will be your Wi-Fi router's name, and then this will be your Wi-Fi router's password. Now, the part they left out of their directions is you're unfortunately gonna have to use this same name for your router right here. And you're gonna have to use the same password here. And that will take care of it connecting. For some reason, I don't understand why they left it out. It should be one section, but it turns out that you need both. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna fill this in and save it off camera so you don't see what my router passwords are. So give me a moment to update and save this. Okay, I've saved it, so I'm gonna pop out the drive and I'm gonna go back over to the desktop. I'm then going to place the drive in here like so. And what I want to do is actually get this lined up nice so you can see the actual display. So I'm gonna grab this for a second. I'm just putting something here to make this more visually aesthetic for you. So let me just make sure this is nice and good there. So the other thing I have to point out is you need to use an actual antenna. So to connect this, it's just a little tiny cup that you have to put on this corner and push down. Now, if you didn't get one with your setup, you can always buy one. They're relatively cheap. It's just a connector and a wire. And as you can see, it's very simple. Now, I'm going to connect something so you can actually see what's occurring when I power this up. So I'm going to change the video so you can actually see what I'm doing here. So let me grab the actual HDMI cable. Normally you would use an HDMI that is HDMI 5 for your display, but mine is currently on order. So let me change this so you can actually see what's occurring. So when I plug this in, it's going to power the board and you'll see the boot up. So this may take a moment for it to actually load, but as you can see, it's loading right here. And when this completes, hopefully we'll have network connectivity. So what I'm going to do while that's booting is I'm actually going to bring up the web browser so that you can see it. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I will blur out part of the screen on this because I don't want you to see my actual router information. But as you can see, the booting is taking a little bit of time. So let's go over to the other screen so you can see this. So here is actually my router. This is my computer at the moment. When we refresh this in a moment, we should hopefully see the CB1 as a host name. So let's go back and check on the desktop real quick. So it appears it hasn't completed just yet, but it's starting to finish up. You can see that it's thinking about something. And hopefully, once this completes, we'll have a splash screen for what the actual HDMI 5 display would look like, which is a touchscreen display. That I'll cover actually in future tutorials, but for now, obviously without having it, this is the best I can do. So, looks like we're pretty close to getting it actually where we want it. So as soon as this splashes, which hopefully will be any second, with the actual display, we know we've actually loaded it. Then we can go back over to the web browser and actually refresh and see if it's there. So this is obviously taking a lot longer than I thought, but as you can see, it now is here. So let's go back over to the desktop, and as you can see, the router currently hasn't been refreshed, so I'm going to click refresh, and hopefully we'll see the CB1 in here, which we do. So I'm going to actually copy this right here, and I'm going to paste it into a new window right here and press enter. Hopefully this will bring up our environment. So we've already loaded the firmware, but there is one issue that we need to address, and that's our config file. So you would click on machine, and down in here, this would be your normal printer config file, but it says include for a label this name. So we're going to actually close out of this, and we're going to grab it from the desktop. So I'm going to click over here. I'm going to reduce this down. I'm going to go to the hardware, or excuse me, firmware, and inside of here we have the Voron and we also have the Manta. So I'm just going to drag and drop. Now I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename. I'm going to highlight this name and press Control C, then cancel. Now I'll go over to printer config and I'll rename this right here with the configuration of that file name. Then I'll save and close. And now the next problem is, if we go over to the dashboard, we're still not connected. So this has to do with the actual configuration over here that I was talking about a moment ago. So if I back out of here, you'll see it. So it's probably quickest to go over here to install. Then we're going to go down and we're going to copy this line right here, but we have to log in. So I'm going to use TeraTerm. So I'm going to click on TeraTerm. The address is actually going to be a 3. So 192.168 or 192.168.1.3. The port is going to be 22. It's SSH, which is secure shell. That means it's a ciphered communication between you and the device. And then I'm going to click OK. Now it's going to say, do you want to do this? Continue. And the password in this case is BIQU and then BIQU. And then we're going to say OK. Now, if you want to change the password, which I suggest, you're going to type sudo, which is sudo user, and then I think it's passwd, and that'll give you a prompt for the new password. We'll call it test, and then you'll confirm again with test, and your password's changed. So the actual name for this account is a little bit more involved, but I'm not going to cover that. I just wanted to show you how to change the password right away. So next thing that we need to do is do that command that we copied by right clicking, and it will paste it in. Then you can hit enter, and this is our MCU as the operating system copies it. So if I right click like I just did now, it made a copy of it, but this is actually the device instance. So we don't need this anymore, so I'm going to close this, but actually I'll leave it open because I know sometimes I don't copy. And I'll go back over to this, click Machine, Printer, and we have to go to this file. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say Save and Close, click on this, and I'm going to find the MCU. Now I'll show you the difference between the two if I type serial colon space and then paste. This one was the default they put in there. So I'm going to backspace to take that out and just clean it up with a little line there. I'll do a save and close. And now we'll go over to the dashboard. It currently is not working yet. So we're going to hit restart. This might take a second, and I know it's going to fail again. And I'll show you why in a second. But what we're looking for is this error. And that means that there's no thermistors attached. So if we go back over to the desktop, I'm going to power down the board just for safety. Then I'm going to attach the bed thermistor right here. And then I'm going to attach the extruder thermistor right here. So these are notched connections. So I'm going to have to get this lined up just right. And I'm going to power this back up. Now, there's no end stops at the moment. I'm leaving those off for a future tutorial because it's a little bit of a long subject and I want to cover a lot of it. So I'm going to power this back up. This is probably going to take 1 or 2 minutes to actually boot, maybe less. Hopefully, if this works correctly, we can get past this actual issue with this and connect to the board. So let's go back over and first we'll check to see if it's booting right here, which it looks like it is. And then we'll go to our desktop to see if it's actually ready. So it's probably ready about now. So let's see what it looks like on the actual desktop. So it's saying try again, so we'll click this. And it looks like we're now connected. So on the actual dashboard, let's give this a second actually. Let's see, machine, dashboard, G-codes, history. I'm still waiting on something to come up here. So that's super odd. Let's do a refresh. Because it's saying disconnected. And it apparently is. So what I need to do is check on the antenna. Let's go back over to the desktop for a second. Maybe I didn't power it up right. So it looks like it's powered. The antenna is connected. It's hanging right here. These are connected. The board is powered. So let me check the website again real quick. And I just refreshed it, so it looks like it's good. And as you can see now, it's actually normal. So that's super weird. Maybe there was some kind of delay and it's coming up. So if we were to go over and actually grab one of the thermistors on the actual desk, this will begin to heat. So I'm going to put my thumb around it so you can see. And I'm going to go back over to the desktop. And as you can see, the temperature is starting to rise. Now I have to thank several people to make this tutorial possible. First of all, my patrons, and also the people on PayPal. And I also have to tell you that BigTreeTech did supply the hardware that I'm working with on this tutorial, and I have been communicating with them my thoughts on this. Now normally I don't do basically my thoughts on actual printer boards. I do tutorials. So I'm just showing you how to use this and understand that I actually have it and will walk you through the process of how to use it. So thank you all for taking the time to watch today, and please remember to like and subscribe as it keeps my channel relevant for you to see. Take care, and I'll catch up with you later.